Country music has always celebrated loyalty, tradition, and respect for the fans. But not every star lived by those rules. Over the years, some of the biggest names in Nashville shocked the industry with scandals, explosive statements, and reckless decisions that turned their own fans against them. Radio stations pulled their songs. Careers collapsed overnight. In this video, we reveal 10 country stars who were boycotted and ended up destroying their own careers. Some made one fatal mistake. Others never learned their lesson. Billy Ray Cyrus. Before controversy surrounded his name, Billy Ray Cyrus was one of the biggest breakout stars country music had seen in years. In 1992, his debut single, Achy Breaky Heart, exploded across America. The song dominated radio, sparked a nationwide dance craze, and turned Cyrus into a household name almost overnight. His debut album, Some Gave All, sold millions of copies and spent an extraordinary number of weeks at the top of the charts. For a brief moment, Billy Ray Cyrus represented the future of commercial country music. But the same song that made him famous would soon trigger a backlash that followed him for decades. Almost immediately after his meteoric rise, criticism began pouring in from both fans and fellow musicians. Many traditionalists in Nashville believed Achy Breaky Heart represented everything they feared about the changing direction of country music. To them, the song was too simplistic, too commercial, and too heavily influenced by pop trends. Some critics even blamed Cyrus for turning country music into a novelty act. As the line dance craze swept across the country, resentment inside parts of the industry quietly grew. The reaction became more visible as the years passed. Comedians mocked him. Radio personalities joked about him. Even some country artists publicly criticized the song's influence. In interviews and award shows, Billy Ray Cyrus increasingly found himself treated less like a respected musician and more like a cultural punchline. While the public still recognized him as a star, Nashville's inner circle began distancing itself. The damage to his reputation slowly affected his career. Follow-up singles struggled to match the enormous success of his debut. Critics often dismissed new releases before they even had a chance to succeed. Instead of being remembered as a serious country artist, Cyrus was frequently labeled as a one-hit wonder, responsible for diluting the genre's authenticity. For an artist who had once dominated the charts, the shift in perception was dramatic. In reality, Billy Ray Cyrus continued recording music and performing for decades, but the shadow of his early controversy never completely disappeared. His relationship with the country establishment remained complicated. While he retained loyal fans, many in Nashville never fully embraced him again in the same way they had at the beginning of his career. The story of Billy Ray Cyrus illustrates a unique kind of boycott in country music history. It was not triggered by politics or scandal, but by a cultural clash within the genre itself. When a song becomes too big, too popular, or too different from tradition, it can sometimes provoke a reaction just as strong as any scandal. And in Billy Ray Cyrus's case, the backlash changed the trajectory of his career forever. Tanya Tucker. Few artists in country music history rose to fame as quickly as Tanya Tucker. In 1972, at just 13 years old, she shocked the industry with the haunting hit Delta Dawn. Her voice carried a maturity far beyond her years, and Nashville immediately recognized that a new star had arrived. Through the 1970s, Tucker built an impressive string of hits and became one of the most recognizable female voices in country music. By the time she reached adulthood, she had already achieved the kind of success most artists spend a lifetime chasing. But fame at such a young age came with a dangerous cost. As Tucker entered her 20s, the spotlight that once celebrated her talent began focusing on her personal life instead. Throughout the early 1980s, tabloids increasingly followed her every move. Her relationships, late-night partying, and rebellious lifestyle quickly became headline material. For many fans who had watched her grow up on country radio, the transformation was shocking. The situation escalated when Tucker began a highly publicized relationship with actor Glen Campbell, who was more than 20 years older than her. Their turbulent romance dominated entertainment news. Arguments, breakups, and reconciliations were widely reported in magazines and television programs. Instead of focusing on her music, the media framed Tucker as a symbol of excess and chaos. Inside Nashville, the reaction was complicated. Country music has always placed a strong emphasis on image, tradition, and connection with family-oriented audiences. As Tucker's reputation grew more controversial, some radio programmers and industry executives began quietly distancing themselves. While she continued to release music, the excitement that once surrounded her career faded. Her struggles with alcohol and substance abuse further damaged her standing in the industry. Missed performances and unpredictable behavior made it difficult for promoters and producers to rely on her. In a business where professionalism and reliability are critical, this reputation created serious obstacles. By the mid-1980s, Tanya Tucker's career appeared to be in serious decline. Many critics believed she had become another tragic example of a child star who could not survive the pressures of fame. The same industry that had once celebrated her talent now seemed reluctant to support her. Yet Tucker's story did not end there. After years of personal struggles, she eventually fought her way back into the spotlight, rebuilding her reputation and proving her resilience as an artist. Her later career included a remarkable comeback that surprised even some of her harshest critics. Still, the period when Tanya Tucker nearly destroyed her own career remains one of the most dramatic chapters in country music history. It revealed how quickly fame can turn against an artist when personal chaos begins overshadowing the music itself. In an industry where image and trust matter deeply, even the brightest young star can find themselves pushed to the edge. Johnny Paycheck. In the rough and rebellious world of outlaw country, Johnny Paycheck built a reputation as one of the genre's most unpredictable stars. With his piercing voice and unapologetic attitude, he became famous for songs that captured the frustration and defiance of working-class America. His biggest hit, Take This Job and Shove It, became an anthem for millions of workers who felt trapped in difficult jobs. The song shot up the charts in 1977 and cemented Paycheck as one of country music's most recognizable voices. At the height of his success, it seemed like nothing could stop him. But Johnny Paycheck's real life was often as chaotic as the rebellious characters in his songs. Long before his biggest hits, he had already developed a reputation for trouble. Born Donald Eugene Lytle, he had spent time in and out of jail during his youth. Even after achieving fame, that reckless streak never completely disappeared. While some fans admired his outlaw image, others worried that the lifestyle would eventually catch up with him. By the early 1980s, the warning signs were becoming impossible to ignore. Paycheck's behavior grew increasingly unpredictable. Stories circulated about heavy drinking, violent arguments, and confrontations in bars. Promoters and venue owners sometimes hesitated to book him because they feared the chaos that might follow his arrival. In a genre that often celebrates rebellion, there is still a line that artists are not supposed to cross. That line was crossed in 1985 in a small bar in Hillsboro, Ohio. During a confrontation with another man, Paycheck pulled out a handgun and shot him. The victim survived, but the consequences were immediate and severe. Paycheck was arrested and eventually convicted of assault with a deadly weapon. He received a prison sentence that sent shockwaves through the country music community. For Nashville, the scandal was devastating. An artist who had once topped the charts was now behind bars. Radio stations stopped playing his music. Record labels distanced themselves. The outlaw persona that had once made him famous suddenly looked less like entertainment and more like a tragic reality. Paycheck spent several years in prison, and during that time, his career collapsed. When he was finally released in the early 1990s, country music had changed dramatically. New stars dominated the airwaves, and the industry had little interest in reviving the career of a singer associated with such a serious crime. Although Johnny Paycheck continued performing for loyal fans and remained respected among some outlaw country supporters, he never regained the level of success he once enjoyed. The shooting incident permanently altered how Nashville viewed him. His story stands as one of the most extreme examples of a country star destroying his own career. What began as a rebellious image eventually spiraled into a real-life scandal that no record label or radio station could ignore. In the end, Johnny Paycheck's downfall showed that sometimes the outlaw lifestyle can go too far, even in a genre that once celebrated it. Glen Campbell. For many years, Glen Campbell represented the very best of country music success. With his smooth voice, remarkable guitar skills, and undeniable charm, he became one of the most beloved entertainers in America. During the late 1960s and 1970s, Campbell dominated both country and pop charts with timeless hits such as Gentle on My Mind, By the Time I Get to Phoenix, and Rhinestone Cowboy. He was not only a chart-topping singer, but also a television star, hosting the Glen Campbell Good Time Hour, which introduced him to millions of viewers across the country. At his peak, Campbell appeared unstoppable. But behind the polished television smile, a very different story was unfolding. As his fame grew, so did the pressures that came with it. Constant touring, intense public scrutiny, and the temptations of celebrity life slowly began to take their toll. By the late 1970s, Campbell was struggling with serious substance abuse issues that threatened both his personal life and his professional career. Alcohol and cocaine began affecting his behavior in increasingly visible ways. Stories of erratic conduct and missed commitments started circulating throughout Nashville and the entertainment press. The image of the clean-cut country gentleman began to crack. For fans who had admired Campbell's wholesome persona, the contrast was startling. The situation became even more controversial when Campbell began a highly publicized relationship with country singer Tanya Tucker. The two artists, who were separated by more than 2 decades in age, became constant subjects of tabloid headlines. Their turbulent relationship played out in the media through public arguments, breakups, and reconciliations. Instead of focusing on music, newspapers and magazines began portraying Campbell as a celebrity whose life was spinning out of control. Inside the country music industry, concern quickly turned into distance. Nashville has long valued professionalism and stability, especially for artists who represent the genre to mainstream audiences. Campbell's growing reputation for unpredictability made record executives and promoters uneasy. The combination of substance abuse, public drama, and declining reliability began damaging his standing within the industry. By the early 1980s, the effects were impossible to ignore. Campbell's chart success slowed dramatically, and many observers believed his career might be nearing its end. For a man who had once been one of the most successful crossover stars in American music, the fall was painful to watch. Yet Glen Campbell's story did not end in tragedy. After confronting his addiction and entering recovery, he slowly rebuilt his life and career. In later years, he regained respect within the music community and was ultimately recognized once again for his extraordinary musical talent. Still, the dark period when his addictions nearly destroyed everything remains a powerful reminder of how fragile success can be. Glen Campbell had once stood at the very top of the entertainment world, but even legends are not immune to the pressures of fame. In country music, as in life, one destructive chapter can threaten to overshadow an entire career. Waylon Jennings. Long before he became a legend of outlaw country, Waylon Jennings was fighting a battle against the very system that controlled Nashville. In the 1960s, the country music industry operated under strict rules. Record labels, producers, and executives decided almost everything: the songs artists recorded, the musicians who played on those recordings, and even the overall sound of each album. For many singers, this system guaranteed commercial success. But for Jennings, it felt like a cage. Jennings had already experienced tragedy early in his career. In 1959, he had been scheduled to fly on the same plane as Buddy Holly during the infamous crash that killed Holly, Ritchie Valens, and the Big Bopper. Jennings gave up his seat to another musician at the last moment. The event haunted him for years and shaped his outlook on life. From that point forward, he became determined to live and perform on his own terms. When Jennings arrived in Nashville as a rising artist, he quickly clashed with the industry's traditional structure. Producers expected him to record songs chosen for him and use session musicians he barely knew. Jennings believed this approach stripped away authenticity. He wanted to perform with his own touring band and maintain creative control over his music. In the rigid Nashville system of the time, that demand was considered almost rebellious. The conflict escalated throughout the late 1960s and early 1970s. Some executives viewed Jennings as difficult and uncooperative. Radio stations often preferred artists who fit neatly within the industry's expectations. As a result, Jennings sometimes found himself pushed aside while more traditional performers received the spotlight. At one point, Jennings grew so frustrated with the system that he nearly abandoned Nashville entirely. He relocated to Texas and began rethinking his entire approach to music. Instead of trying to conform, he embraced a more independent style that mixed country with rock influences. His appearance changed as well. Long hair, leather clothing, and a rougher stage presence that stood in sharp contrast to the polished image of mainstream country stars. For a time, this rebellion made Jennings appear like an outsider within the industry. Some executives worried that his refusal to follow the rules would destroy his career. But something unexpected happened. Fans connected deeply with his authenticity. His music began reaching audiences who felt alienated by the overly polished Nashville sound. Eventually, the movement that Jennings helped inspire became known as outlaw country. Alongside artists like Willie Nelson, Jennings helped transform the genre by proving that artists could succeed without surrendering their independence. Albums like Honky Tonk Heroes and Dreaming My Dreams became major successes and reshaped the direction of country music. Yet the road to that success had been filled with tension and resistance. Jennings' refusal to obey Nashville's rules nearly cost him his career before it ultimately helped redefine the genre. His story is a rare example in country music history. While many artists are boycotted or pushed aside because of scandal, Waylon Jennings faced resistance simply for demanding creative freedom. In the end, what once looked like career destruction became a revolution that changed country music forever. Allan Coe. In the world of outlaw country, few artists carried a reputation as controversial as Allan Coe. With his long hair, tattoos, and unapologetic attitude, Coe embodied the rebellious spirit that defined the outlaw movement of the 1970s. His songs blended raw storytelling with gritty honesty, and for many fans, he represented the darker, more authentic side of country music. Tracks like You Never Even Called Me By My Name became cult classics, earning him a loyal following among listeners who preferred country music with a sharper edge. But Allan Coe's career was surrounded by controversy almost from the beginning. Before he ever achieved fame, Coe had spent years in prison for various offenses. He often spoke openly about his time behind bars, turning those experiences into part of his personal mythology. While some fans admired the authenticity of his background, others saw it as a warning sign. As his career progressed, the controversies only intensified. Coe became known for performing songs that many people considered deeply offensive. Some of his underground recordings contained explicit lyrics and themes that touched on race, politics, and social issues in ways that shocked both fans and critics. Even though those recordings were not officially released through mainstream labels, their existence quickly spread through word of mouth. The reaction from the country music establishment was swift and unforgiving. Many radio stations refused to play Coe's music altogether, fearing backlash from audiences and advertisers. For an artist trying to survive in a genre heavily dependent on radio airplay, this was a devastating obstacle. Without radio support, even talented performers struggle to maintain mainstream success. Inside Nashville, Coe's reputation became increasingly complicated. Some fellow musicians respected his songwriting ability and his commitment to artistic freedom. Others felt that his provocative material crossed lines that country music should not approach. The debate surrounding his music often overshadowed the songs themselves. Over time, Coe's relationship with the industry deteriorated further. Major record labels and radio programmers were reluctant to promote an artist whose reputation carried so much controversy. While he continued touring and recording music for devoted fans, his chances of returning to the mainstream country spotlight grew smaller with each passing year. Yet despite the backlash, Allan Coe never softened his image. If anything, he leaned even more heavily into the outlaw persona that had defined his career. For supporters, that defiance represented authenticity and artistic independence. For critics, it confirmed the belief that he had pushed his career beyond the limits of what Nashville could accept. Coe's story illustrates a different kind of downfall in country music. Unlike artists whose careers collapse after a single scandal, His decline came from years of controversy that gradually eroded industry support. In a genre built on tradition and connection with broad audiences, an artist who continually challenges those boundaries risks being pushed to the margins. In the end, David Allan Coe remained a legendary figure among outlaw country fans, but his turbulent reputation ensured that Nashville's mainstream gates would never fully reopen for him. Travis Tritt. During the early 1990s, Travis Tritt stood among the most recognizable voices in country music. With his gritty vocals, Southern rock influence, and confident stage presence, he quickly separated himself from the polished Nashville sound that dominated the era. Songs like Here's a Quarter, Call Someone Who Cares, Anymore, and Trouble turned him into a major star. Fans admired his rebellious attitude and his willingness to challenge the industry's expectations, while still delivering traditional country storytelling. At the peak of his career, Tritt was selling millions of records and filling concert venues across the United States. He won Grammy Awards, earned numerous nominations from the Country Music Association, and became one of the defining artists of the 1990s country boom. For a time, it seemed that Travis Tritt had achieved the rare balance of commercial success and artistic credibility. However, as the music industry evolved and public conversations around politics and social issues grew more intense, Tritt increasingly found himself at the center of controversy. Known for his outspoken personality, he never hesitated to express his opinions publicly. Over time, his political statements and strong views on cultural issues began attracting as much attention as his music. Social media amplified the situation dramatically. In the past, controversial opinions from country artists might have remained within interviews or live performances. But in the digital era, every statement spreads instantly to millions of people. Tritt frequently used online platforms to comment on political matters, government policies, and cultural debates. These comments generated strong reactions from both supporters and critics. Some fans admired his willingness to speak openly and defend his beliefs. Others felt that his outspoken political positions divided audiences that once united around his music. For radio stations and event organizers trying to appeal to a broad audience, this growing polarization created uncomfortable challenges. In several instances, promoters faced pressure from critics who called for boycotts of concerts or appearances connected to artists expressing controversial views. While Travis Tritt continued performing and maintaining a loyal fan base, his relationship with parts of the industry became more complicated. Country music has always reflected the culture and values of its listeners, but it also depends heavily on radio support, corporate sponsorships, and large public events. When an artist becomes associated with divisive debates, some industry figures prefer to avoid the potential backlash entirely. As a result, opportunities that once came easily can suddenly become harder to secure. Despite these challenges, Tritt has remained active as a performer and recording artist. His fans continue to support his music, and his legacy as one of the defining voices of 1990s country remains secure. Yet his story illustrates how the modern entertainment landscape has changed the risks associated with public statements. For country stars, the spotlight now extends far beyond the stage. In an age where every opinion can ignite controversy, even the most successful artists must navigate a delicate balance between personal expression and the expectations of a national audience. Travis Tritt's career shows how easily that balance can become a source of conflict within the country music world. Hank Williams Jr. Few names in country music carry the kind of legacy attached to Hank Williams Jr. As the son of the legendary Hank Williams, he grew up under one of the most famous shadows in American music history. For years, audiences compared him relentlessly to his father, expecting him to follow the same path. But instead of copying the past, Hank Jr. eventually carved out his own identity. Blending Southern rock with country traditions, he created a powerful sound that made him one of the most successful country artists of the 1980s. Hits like Family Tradition, A Country Boy Can Survive, and All My Rowdy Friends Are Coming Over Tonight turned him into a symbol of rugged independence. His music celebrated rebellion, self-reliance, and Southern pride. Fans embraced the larger-than-life persona he built around that image. By the time the 1990s arrived, Hank Williams Jr. had become one of the most recognizable figures in the entire country music industry. For more than 20 years, his influence extended beyond the charts. One of the most visible parts of his career was the theme song for ESPN's Monday Night Football. Every week, millions of viewers heard his famous line, "Are you ready for some football?" The song became one of the most iconic television intros in American sports broadcasting. For decades, it seemed inseparable from the program itself. But in October 2011, a single interview changed everything. During an appearance on the television program Fox and Friends, Hank Williams Jr. made controversial political remarks while discussing a golf outing involving President Barack Obama and House Speaker John Boehner. In the middle of the conversation, he compared the situation to Adolf Hitler playing golf with Israeli leader Benjamin Netanyahu. The comparison immediately sparked outrage. The reaction was swift and intense. News outlets across the country reported on the interview, and social media quickly amplified the controversy. Within hours, ESPN announced that it would remove Williams' theme song from Monday Night Football. For a partnership that had lasted more than 2 decades, the decision was dramatic and symbolic. Suddenly, the artist who had been a staple of American television every Monday night found himself at the center of a national debate. Some supporters defended his right to express political opinions. Others believed the comparison had crossed a line that a public figure should not cross. For Hank Williams Jr., the consequences were immediate. The loss of the ESPN platform meant losing one of the most visible connections between his music and the broader American audience. While his loyal fan base continued supporting him, the controversy marked a major turning point in how parts of the entertainment world viewed him. Unlike some scandals that fade quickly, this incident became permanently associated with his career. It demonstrated how a single public statement can overshadow decades of success. For an artist who had spent years building a reputation as a country music icon, the fallout from that interview showed just how fragile even the most powerful legacies can be. Hank Williams Jr. remained an influential figure in country music, but the controversy surrounding that moment ensured his career would never be viewed in exactly the same way again. Morgan Wallen. By the late 2010s, Morgan Wallen had become one of the fastest rising stars in country music. With his distinctive voice, modern country sound, and strong connection to younger audiences, he quickly climbed the charts and built a massive fan base. Songs like Whiskey Glasses, Chasing You, and later the record-breaking album Dangerous. The double album turned him into one of the most commercially successful country artists of his generation. Radio stations played his songs constantly, streaming numbers soared, and it seemed as if Wallen was unstoppable. But in February 2021, everything changed in a single night. A short video recorded at outside Wallen's home in Nashville was published by the celebrity news website TMZ. In the footage, Wallen could be heard using a racial slur while speaking with friends after a night out. Within hours, the video spread across social media and news outlets across the United States. The reaction from the music industry was immediate and intense. Major radio networks quickly pulled his songs from their playlists. Streaming services temporarily removed him from curated country playlists. The Academy of Country Music suspended his eligibility for awards, and several industry organizations publicly condemned the incident. In Nashville, a city where reputation and relationships matter deeply, the fallout was enormous. For many observers, it looked like Morgan Wallen's career might be over almost overnight. Only weeks earlier, he had been one of the most dominant artists in country music. Now he was facing one of the most severe industry reactions in recent memory. Wallen responded by issuing a public apology and asking fans not to defend his behavior. He stepped away from the spotlight for several months and entered a period of reflection and personal counseling. During that time, many people in the industry questioned whether he would ever recover from the controversy. Yet, something unexpected happened. Despite the boycott from radio and parts of the country music establishment, Wallen's music continued to perform extraordinarily well on streaming platforms. His album Dangerous remained near the top of the charts for months, and many fans continued supporting him. The divide between the official industry response and audience behavior became one of the most widely discussed stories in modern country music. Eventually, radio stations slowly began reintroducing his songs, and Wallen returned to performing live concerts. His later releases once again dominated the charts, proving that his fan base remained incredibly strong. However, the scandal permanently altered how his career is viewed. For many people in Nashville, the incident remains a reminder of how quickly a modern country star can face massive backlash. In the age of smartphones and social media, a single moment can spread across the world within minutes, triggering consequences that even the biggest stars cannot control. Morgan Wallen's story illustrates the complicated reality of modern fame. While his career ultimately survived, the controversy surrounding that night will always remain part of his legacy. One of the most dramatic boycotts in recent country music history. The Chicks. At the beginning of the 2000s, the Chicks were not just successful, they were unstoppable. The trio, made up of Natalie Maines, Marty McGuire, and Emily Strayer, had transformed country music with their powerful harmonies, bold personalities, and chart-dominating hits. Albums like Wide Open Spaces and Fly sold millions of copies, making them one of the most commercially successful country acts of their era. Their concerts sold out across the United States, and radio stations played their music constantly. In Nashville, they were considered one of the genre's brightest success stories. But in March 2003, during a concert in London, one moment would trigger one of the most dramatic boycotts in country music history. While speaking to the audience, lead singer Natalie Maines made a brief political remark about then-President George W. Bush, saying the group was ashamed that he was from Texas. At the time, the United States was preparing to invade Iraq, and political tensions across the country were extremely high. Within hours, the comment spread rapidly through American media outlets. The reaction from parts of the country music audience was explosive. Country radio stations across the United States began pulling the Chicks' songs from their playlists almost immediately. Some stations publicly announced the boycott, while others quietly removed the group from rotation. In several cities, protests were organized where angry fans destroyed or burned CDs and merchandise connected to the band. The backlash went far beyond radio. Concerts faced heavy protests, and the group reportedly received serious threats. Many figures inside the country music industry distanced themselves from the trio, fearing the controversy would damage their own reputations. In Nashville, where connection with conservative audiences has historically been important for success, the political nature of the comment created a deep divide. For the Chicks, the consequences were immediate and severe. Their presence on country radio, one of the most important platforms for artists in the genre, virtually disappeared overnight. Even though they remained enormously successful internationally, their relationship with the Nashville establishment was permanently shaken. The group attempted to address the controversy. Natalie Maines issued statements expressing regret that her words had caused such anger, though she also defended her right to express personal opinions. The debate surrounding the incident became part of a larger national conversation about free speech, patriotism, and the role of politics in entertainment. In 2006, the Chicks released the album Taking the Long Way, which directly addressed the backlash they had experienced. The record achieved major commercial success and even won multiple Grammy Awards. However, the relationship between the group and country radio never fully recovered. The boycott of the Chicks remains one of the most famous controversies in the history of country music. It demonstrated just how quickly the industry can turn against even the most successful artists when cultural and political tensions collide with entertainment. For the Chicks, a single moment on stage changed the course of their career forever, transforming them from Nashville's biggest success story into one of its most controversial chapters.